You're watching a 14-year-old girl being dragged out of the emperor's room. She's not walking. Two servants are pulling her by the arms. Her feet drag across the marble floor. Her eyes are open, but there's no one inside anymore. 3 days ago, that girl was laughing in the room next to yours. This morning they called her. Now she's something else, like someone pulled her soul out. A servant sees you watching. She grabs your arm, pulls you back into your room. Don't look, never look. And when they come for you, don't fight. Rome. Year 39. AD. You're 14 years old. You've been locked in a place called the Garden of Venus for 6 days. And you just learned what happens to girls when they get summoned. Your dad said this was a privilege. Your mum cried when you got on the carriage. The neighbours watched with envy as you rode up the hill toward the palace. No one told you the truth. No one told you that the most powerful man in the world has a system, like a factory, that writes down girls' names on tablets, their ages, what they look like, and calls them one by one to his room. And when they come out, they're not the same anymore. This is the story of what Caligula did to the girls in his palace. And the scariest part isn't what he did. It's that no one stopped him. Not the senators, not the guards, not even the parents who handed their daughters over at the door. Everyone knew, and everyone stayed quiet. If this story grips you, drop a like and subscribe. It takes a second and helps us pull more voices out of the silence. But before you understand what happened in those rooms, you need to understand how a human being becomes capable of this. Because Caligula wasn't born a monster. He was manufactured. The year is 19 AD. A 7-year-old boy runs through a Roman military camp, wearing a miniature soldier's uniform, complete with tiny armour and little red boots. The soldiers adore him. They call him Caligula, Little Boots. He's the son of Germanicus, Rome's greatest general since Julius Caesar. The men believe this child brings them victory. He has no idea what's coming. 1 year later, his father dies. The official story: sudden illness. The whispered story: poison. Ordered by Emperor Tiberius himself. Caligula is 8 years old when the machine starts destroying his family. His mother, dragged from their home, accused of treason, starved to death in exile. His oldest brother, arrested, imprisoned, so hungry he tried to eat the stuffing from his mattress. His second brother, exiled to an island where guards tortured him until he smashed his own head against the walls to end it. One by one, erased, and young Caligula watches all of it happen. By 31 AD, he's the last one left, 19 years old, the sole survivor. Then comes the summons. Emperor Tiberius wants to see him. On Capri, the ancient historians, Suetonius, Tacitus, people writing within living memory of these events, describe Capri as a house of horrors. Tiberius had turned the island into his personal fortress, far from Rome, far from anyone who might object to what he did there. Into this environment walks teenage Caligula. He knows Tiberius murdered his family, everyone knows, but he can't show it. One wrong look, one flash of anger, and he's dead. Suetonius writes something chilling. There never was a better servant or a worse master. For 6 years, Caligula watches, studies, learns exactly how to break human beings from the greatest monster in Roman history. Then in 37 AD, Tiberius dies. Some say natural causes, others say Caligula smothered him with a pillow. Either way, the hostage is now emperor. Rome celebrates. They think they're getting the son of beloved Germanicus. They have no idea what they just unleashed. For 7 months, everything seems perfect. Caligula releases prisoners, hosts spectacular games, distributes money to the people. Then he gets sick. A severe fever that lasts weeks. The person who wakes up is not the same person who went to sleep. What happened during those fevered days we'll never know. But when Caligula recovered, something inside him had shattered, and Rome was about to learn what he'd been hiding. Imperial officials begin travelling through Rome and the surrounding territories. They visit houses of wealthy families and poor families alike. They're not looking for soldiers. They're not recruiting talent. They're looking for three things: age, beauty, purity. Girls between 12 and 16 years old, faces that please the emperor, and virgins verified by family reputation and sometimes examined. Suetonius, writing decades later, describes this process in fragments. He mentions young women of noble families brought to the palace. He notes that Caligula inspected them personally, as a slave dealer examines merchandise before purchase. Even Suetonius, a man who documented orgies, murders, and incest without flinching, seems uncomfortable describing what came next. Records were kept. Wax tablets documented each girl's name, age, physical appearance, family connections. This wasn't impulsive cruelty. This was inventory management. Human beings reduced to entries in an accounting ledger. The system was terrifyingly efficient. Officials travelled in pairs carrying imperial seals that opened any door. They had quotas to meet, reports to file. They measured their success in numbers: how many candidates identified, how many families visited, how many girls delivered. This wasn't chaos, this was bureaucracy, and that's what makes it truly horrifying. Not one madman acting on impulse, but dozens of functionaries processing human beings with the same detachment they'd used to count grain shipments. The families didn't resist. In a society where honour was everything, being selected by the emperor was presented as the highest privilege. Parents competed for the opportunity, dressed their daughters in white, braided their hair with flowers. Some mothers wept. Mothers, when the carriage departed, but they wept quietly, because crying loudly would mean they weren't happy, and not being happy would mean serving the emperor was something bad. So they swallowed their tears, swallowed their doubts, and let their daughters go. They called it the Garden of Venus. The name sounds beautiful, romantic, like a place filled with flowers and fountains where young women learned poetry and music. It was a prison. But here's what made it worse than any dungeon. A dungeon looks like a dungeon. Chains, cold stone. You know where you stand. This place looked like paradise. Silk curtains everywhere. Beds softer than anything these girls had ever touched. Perfume thick enough to taste. Food most Romans never knew existed. Servants who smiled and fulfilled every request. Everything beautiful, everything wrong. Modern psychologists have a term for what this does to the human mind. Cognitive dissonance. When your senses tell you one thing and your instincts tell you another, your brain starts to crack. You can't trust your own perceptions anymore. The girls couldn't leave their rooms without permission, couldn't contact their families, didn't know what day it was, didn't know what they were supposed to do. They just waited, sometimes for days, sometimes for weeks. No one explained anything. No one told them when they'd be called. No one told them what happened when they were. They only heard footsteps at night, passing their doors, stopping at another door, a girl being taken, and the next morning, that girl would be different, quieter, emptier, or she wouldn't come back at all. The servants who brought food watched everything. Every tear got reported. Every whisper between girls got documented. If two girls started forming a friendship, finding comfort in shared suffering, they'd be separated, moved to different wings. Because connection breeds strength, and strength breeds resistance. Isolation was part of the design. The waiting itself was the torture. In the 1960s, psychologist Martin Seligman conducted experiments that revealed something disturbing about the mind. When subjects learned that nothing they did could change their situation, they stopped trying. They gave up, not from weakness, but because their brains were trying to protect them from madness. He called it learned helplessness. First you fight, then you realize fighting doesn't work. Then you stop fighting, then you stop feeling. The girls in the Garden of Venus were being systematically broken, not through violence, not yet, but through luxury that felt wrong, kindness that hid cruelty, and uncertainty that never ended. By the time Caligula called for them, most had already surrendered. That was the point. We're about to reveal how Caligula used these girls to control all of Rome. If you've made it this far, you understand why this story matters. Subscribe, because Crown and Dagger doesn't hide from history's darkest chapters. But Caligula wasn't satisfied with just the girls. He wanted to break everyone. The historian Cassius Dio describes imperial banquets that became theatres of systematic humiliation. Marble halls filled with Rome's most powerful men, senators, generals, governors, eating and drinking and pretending everything was normal. Then Caligula would stand, walk between the tables, examine the wives of his guests, the way he examined the girls in his garden. He would select one, take her hand, lead her away, and her husband would sit there, do nothing, say nothing. What could he do? Object. His children would be dead by morning, his entire family erased from Roman history. So he sat, drank his wine, made small talk with the man beside him, who was pretending not to hear anything. Waited. 20 minutes passed. 30. The conversation around him was forced, brittle, everyone pretending this was normal, everyone pretending they couldn't hear the sounds from the other room. Cassius Dio